Hi guys, it's me, Mr. Bertoch, your incredibly handsome science teacher. And in this video, we are going to talk about natural selection. I forgot for a second. In an earlier video, another video, I talk about evolution and go into a lot of depth on what evolution is and the theory of evolution and some of the evidence for evolution, as well as the controverting evidence against evolution. And I would highly recommend watching that very long video. In this video, I'm going to talk about, unless I get sidetracked, I am going to talk about I'm going to talk about natural selection. I will talk about artificial selection in another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about natural selection, which is believed to be one of the key factors driving evolution forward. So in a nutshell, what is evolution? What, pray tell, is this crazy thing called evolution? Well, it's the theory, the idea that life evolves over time from one living thing to another based on adapting, adaptifying to the environment, to factors in the environment, and to situations that impact the ability of an organism to survive. Because it's very important that an organism is able to survive in its environment, is it not? So, for example, if I take an elephant, a precious, beautiful baby elephant, so adorable, and I kiss its little trunk, and then I say, "Come here, you adorable baby elephant," and I throw it into the ocean, what's going to happen to the cute little baby elephant? It's probably going to drown because it is not adapted to live in the ocean. Right? Likewise, if I take a cute, adorable baby dolphin, and he's like making that dolphin chirping noise that I can't make, and he is so sweet, and I take him and I'm like, "Come here, you precious baby dolphin," and then I chuck him out of the helicopter into the desert. He's going to probably not do so well. He's probably going to die because he is not adapted to his environment. Well, what if an animal is adapted to its environment? And he's doing great. He lives in a place where everything is perfect. He is in balance, in equilibrium with his environment. And then the stupid and jerky environment changes on it. And now all of a sudden that equilibrium is disrupted. And the species that was minding its own business, living, let's say maybe it is, I don't know, it's some sort of tree-dwelling animal like a squirrel. And he jumps happily and joyfully from tree to tree, and then one day all the trees disappear. But it really wouldn't happen like one day, right? It would happen over thousands of years, but gradually the trees disappear. And, this animal, he depended on nuts from the trees. He depended on the trees to make his home, his nest or whatever. And now, all of a sudden, there are no trees. What is that poor squirrel going to do? He can either die like the baby elephant, or he can adapt to his environment and change and find ways to survive. So, natural selection is a way that scientists believe that animals can gradually change as the environment gradually changes with the environment, or even sometimes suddenly changes. And maybe the animal or plant, the organism struggles for a little while, but then adapts and comes into a new equilibrium. And what was a tree squirrel, maybe it becomes like maybe it learns to dig tunnels and it evolves new feet that make it dig, and it learns to eat new kinds of foods, and its teeth adapt and change to accommodate the eating of those new foods, and its digestive system slightly changes, and it becomes something new. So that is natural selection. Let's give some examples and talk about how it occurs. So first of all, it's important to understand what is driving the force of natural selection. We talk about like survival of the fittest, which is this idea that the strongest animal, or I keep saying animal, but it could be plant, whatever, any kind of life form, but I'm just going to go with animal. So the strongest animal in a litter of animals is the one that's most likely to survive, and it eats its brothers and sisters. Not really, because that'd be horrifying, but its brothers and sisters maybe don't do as well as it does because it was just a little stronger or a little better swimmer or a little better flyer or whatever, and that gave it an advantage. And so it lived to pass on its traits to the next generation. Okay, so that's the idea of natural selection, or survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is an idea that was created by a guy named Charles Darwin, and he was this really smart scientist who lived a long time ago in Great Britain, and he used the idea of survival of the fittest to explain how life on Earth evolved to fill all of the different niches that niche, all the different types of life that are on the Earth. But survival of the fittest is not exactly the way scientists anymore really view evolution, because we have better technology now than Darwin did, and we understand in a way that he didn't how living things grow and why they grow the way they do. And that would be because of the DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is hidden away very deep in the nuclei of every cell in your body. It is the instructions that tell your handsome body how to become so incredibly good looking. If you have DNA that says you will be a handsome science teacher when you grow up, well, maybe it doesn't say science teacher per se, but it says handsome, then you will grow and you will become whatever that DNA says. If you have the DNA of a strawberry, you're going to grow into a strawberry plant. If you have the DNA of a handsome science teacher, then you're going to grow into a handsome, well, again, maybe not a science teacher, but you're going to grow to be handsome. Okay, whatever. You're going to grow into a bear or a panda or a squirrel based on what your DNA tells you to grow into. You're going to follow the DNA. You're going to do exactly what the DNA says. Every cell in your body has a copy of your entire DNA code. It's like a giant library filled with books that's stuffed into every single cell in your body. Has all the instructions for how to grow you, and they're all identical. Mostly, except that, see, here's what happens. Every time your cells replicate, your cells copy, they split, they multiply, they divide and become new cells, the DNA is copied. So when you create two new cells from one old cell, the DNA is copied. That entire library of DNA code is copied. And it's usually done right. But we're talking about literally millions and millions of lines of code that are being copied. And sometimes a mistake is made. And we call that mistake a mutation. And usually a mutation does nothing. Usually it doesn't affect the living thing at all. Sometimes it affects the living thing in negative ways and causes diseases like cancer or miscarriages to occur or whatever. The thing dies because of the mutation. And very rarely, sometimes that mutation, that random mutation that occurs in the DNA, copying the DNA code, will result in a benefit to the living thing. So it is important that you understand that these mutations are totally random. There's no plan saying, let's make this bird have wings or this creature have bigger wings or whatever. Okay, it's just a totally random, one DNA part of the DNA, one gene is copied incorrectly. Could have been another part that was copied incorrectly. And the way it's copied incorrectly was random. But because the body is going to follow the DNA code, once it's copied incorrectly, the body is going to do whatever the code says. And if the code now says grow in a certain way, then the body's going to grow that way. And if that way of growing is bad, then the thing is going to die or not have any advantage. But every so often, that random mutation in the DNA code, copying of the DNA, results in a positive trait. A little bit slightly better thing happens. And the thing is able to then be more adapted to its environment. Okay, an example of this that I shared in the evolution video is of a polar bear. So once upon a time, in the land of the Arctic, there lived brown bears, and they had brown fur, and we called those grizzly bears, right? And one of the grizzly bears had DNA that was miscopied, and it happened to be in the gametes, which are the sex cells that are passed on to the next generation. And that particular random mutation resulted in one of the babies having white fur. So now the DNA says grow white fur instead of grow brown fur. And because that's what the DNA code says, that's what the bear did. It grew white fur. And it didn't know why it had white fur. And the mom is like, what the heck freak baby did I have with this white fur? But it had white fur, and it lived its life with white fur. Well, probably all the other bears made fun of it, and they probably had a song about they didn't want to play any grizzly bear games. Then one foggy Christmas day, and yeah. Anyway, the bear was because it had white fur, and it lived in a place where there's a lot of snow. It was more adapted to the environment. It was more camouflaged. And camouflage just means it hides in its environment, right? And so it was able to probably hunt a little bit better, get a little bit more food because the prey couldn't see it. Brown stands out against snow, white doesn't. And so it was more successful, got lots of delicious fish and other things that it eats. And so it survived, and it passed on, had babies, and passed on the white fur. And now there's like a little family of white bears. And all the other bears are like, look at those weirdos. They're all white. Those 4 bears. Why are they all so weird? And then the next generation, there's like 8 white bears, and then there's like 20 white bears, and then there's like 100 white bears. And before you know it, there's white bears everywhere, and there's fewer and fewer brown bears because the white bears are getting more food because they are camouflaged better. And eventually the white bears take over, and now you have polar bears in that environment. And so that is the idea. That's how mutations occur, completely random, that lead to either a disadvantage, neutral, or an advantage. And if they are an advantage and the animal survives because it gives it some sort of advantage in its environment, then it will pass on those traits to the next generation. And the next generation will say, we're so happy, we survived better. Another type of selection besides natural selection would be called, scientists call sexual selection. We see this a lot in birds. So sexual selection refers to the preference of a male or female and a trait being passed on simply because the one gender or the other is particular about what they pick. So male birds very often can be very beautiful, like a peacock, or I can't think of the bird that I was just going to say. There's a type of bird, and I honestly can't think of what it's called, so never mind. But there are lots of male birds, like a mallard duck is much prettier than the female version of that same species. And the reason is because the females are picky. They're like, I don't want to mate with an ugly bird, and I'm only going to pick the handsome, attractive birds. And so the traits that the female birds like, such as color, become more and more prominent in the males, because the males that have more color are the ones that are picked by the females to mate with. And so they pass on the trait to the future generations of males. And over time, the males become more and more beautiful because the females only pick the attractive ones. So that is called sexual selection. In another video, I'm going to talk about artificial selection, which is when humans get involved and things change based on what benefits humans rather than what benefits the animal itself. And that is natural selection, a way that a force that drives evolution according to the theory of evolution. Hi guys, thanks for watching my video. These rambling science videos where I go unscripted and just kind of barf up all the science knowledge out of my head are part of a series that go along with an online class that I teach, which you can sign up for if you go to handsomescienceteacher.com. I also have a whole bunch of free resources for homeschoolers. I have hundreds of articles on every topic that covers your entire science curriculum from 5th through 8th grade. I have online games and quizzes, all curated and written by this handsome guy, a science teacher with, well, three degrees, but 2 of them are in science. So it's targeted right to and directly to your science students. So sign up, subscribe to the channel, and I release lots of videos. Also, in addition to these ones, lots of little short videos that are like 2 minutes long that cover science topics. Those ones you don't get to see my handsome face, but they're still good videos and they're much more targeted, and those ones are scripted, so you don't have to hear me like you are right now going blah blah blah. The end. Subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.